Scrappy peeps, Suzanna here today for Spiegel Mom Scraps to share with you this layout that I created using one of the new sequins mixes, as well as some Shimmerz that is available from the store. I have recently received some goodies from Pretty Little Studio that I ordered, and I wanted to use some of that for a snow layout. So I took a digital cut file and I took out the Let It and just wanted to use snow because I wanted to stamp the words using these LE Studio letters and use my Shimmerz. So one of the cool things about stamping is you don't just have to use ink pads to stamp. You can use your mists as well. I did a video a couple of months back. It's one of my top 10 videos from 2017, and I actually sprayed mist directly onto the stamp and then sprayed water to water it down and stamped a water background. So what I'm doing here is I'm using my letter stamps, and I'm stamping directly into the mist that I've sprayed onto a watercolor palette. And what I love about this effect, especially for snow, is that it sort of leaves a watermark effect to it. It's not a clean, crisp stamp per se, but you can see where you have gradations of color, which it looks like kind of like a footprint in the snow. And so I thought it was a great way of using my mist to stamp and reflect more of the mood of the layout per se. So I did the letters in blue, and that is a Frostbite Vibes. And then I'm going to use this red, which is a Spirtz. Shimmerz Spirtz, and it's Ruby is the name, and I'm going to use that to stamp some red snowflakes, doing something very the same thing. I sprayed my red mist onto that little palette there, and then I'm going to sort of smush my stamp around in the red and then stamp directly onto the layout there. So again, you can stamp without stamp pads, which is really cool, but don't expect to get a clean effect like this, where I'm using that stamp pad from, I believe that is a High Swap stamp pad there. So that gives you a very crisp, clean image, whereas stamping into the mist, it's a little less crisp, but it still has a great effect. A very soft stamp is what you get from that. So that is my stamping, and I wanted to back this piece of white cardstock on that navy blue there. So I need to trim a quarter inch off of each edge, but because my stamping is very close to the top of the page there, I'm going to take an extra quarter inch off of the bottom so that I have a quarter inch border going all the way around. And although the picture is got a lot of white in it, I still want a white border, and even though I'm putting the picture onto white cardstock, I also still want that white border, just for that, a little bit of that tone on tone sort of delineation there. Plus I know with the picture that I want to put a ton of paper layers behind it. I ran out of adhesive in my ATG, and so I just switched to my Teresa Collins glue gun there. And so what I love about the way that this die cut works, the digital die that I put onto the piece of cardstock there, is that I am going to use both the negative and the positive. So I've got that blue showing through, and then I am going to pop up snow and just offset it a little bit for a little bit of dimension in the title of this layout. I did use the actual, so that's what it's going to look like when I pop it up later. So that is going to be the background of the page. Now I want to add a little bit more color to this, and so I based my colors based on the colors in this collection from Pretty Little Studio. It's called Winter Joy, and so I'm just going to build layers around the photo in order to incorporate a little bit more color and keep the emphasis on the stamping and that white sort of snow that reflects the white sky, the sort of that washed out sky that you get when it is snowing. So I'm just going to use bits and pieces of these papers. Pretty Little Studio papers come in 8x8, and knowing that I only have 8x8 of each of these pieces because I did get the collection, I don't want to use all of it behind my photos, so I do end up sort of cutting L's in order to surround my photo. Now I wanted a little bit more color to the background, so I just took this tripping over my words there, sorry. Frostbite Vibes. Try saying that quickly 3 times, 5 times. Frostbite Vibes, and just use the splatter technique to splatter a little bit more of that blue to add a little bit more color to the background there, and also to mimic that falling snow look. So I'm bringing back out these papers again, and I lost my picture. That's why I disappeared for a while. I was looking for that, and I decided that I wanted to use this is just white tissue paper behind the photo. I thought that would also add to the mood and the look of the snow. Some fun foam that I'm just sticking behind the picture to pop it up off of the tissue. I like when you have the dimension of the photo off of tissue paper because it allows you to see the dimension of the tissue a little bit more. So I'm just going to trim that down so that it's not clean lines. I like it to have a little bit of that asymmetry. And I always forget not to put the adhesive directly over the tissue because it rips, and just put the adhesive directly onto the paper, trim that out, and then I'm just going to put various layers behind the photo to add pops of color. I'm going to use the red on one corner and then juxtapose that with the blue on the other side there. And I'm just going to use my scissors to trim that out. It's always funny to me how you always run out of adhesive in the middle of a project and never at the end. Fortunately, I have these 2 guns and I'm able to keep both my ATG and then the Heidi swap thing loaded at all times and ready to go for those scrapping necessities. So now I'm going to use the blue and do the same thing that I did before and kind of cut the L to kitty corner the opposite side of the photo. And that is going to be it for the paper layers there, and it's time to get out my adhesive, my foam adhesive, and put that down. Now, before I put snow down on top of and sort of offset overlay the word on top of the negative, I'm laying down some thread. It's just plain white cotton thread, but I like the way that the thread behind the word sort of adds to sort of that blowing snow effect. This is not the normal foam that I use. These are 3D foam squares from Scrapbook Adhesives. I'm going to cut them down so that they fit on the narrowest parts of the words. But what I like about these is that when I put the word down, I don't want it to collapse down into itself, and so I like the way that this foam from Scrapbook Adhesives holds itself, and so I have sped this up incredibly. This is a very time consuming because they're just those little squares that you can see there, so I sped this up because otherwise this video was about 6 minutes longer than it really needed to be. Literally all I'm doing is I'm cutting down the foam, peeling off the backing, sticking it on, and then peeling off the backing again. I will tell you that when I put this word down, the part of the letter over the end of the W, I didn't like the way that it looks, so you'll see that it looks kind of funny. There's too much of the navy blue showing through, but I do go in later and lift that up and fix that, and you'll see the improvement in that in the close-ups. You can see to the left of the outside of the W, there's a little too much blue in there. So now I have the stickers that go with this collection, and I'm just adding my trio, my third snowflake to these letters. The snowflake that I put in next to the L, I actually moved from where you see it there down to closer to the other snowflakes. And now to finish off this Spiegel Mom Scraps layout. Of course, what would a layout from Spiegelmom Scraps be without one of the great sequins collections? So I'm going to take the Wonderland sequins mix, and I'm going to scatter that throughout, and again to add to that sort of falling snow look. I am putting tone on tone sequins on the page, but it looks fantastic. It really does look like falling snow, and I love that look. So before I do that though, I am creating a little bit of a border there. I have that piece of patterned paper that looks like the paint strips of the across the top, just above the title there, and I want something to tie into the bottom of the page. So I used a little bit of red leftover for pattern paper and cut off just a teeny bit of that blue and just sort of layered those there. What I end up doing off camera, and I'm sorry I do so much off camera, but what happens is you finish building the layout and you think, oh, it just needs that little something to sort of tie it all together, is I do put in a label, again from Pretty Little Studio, and a little sticker that says today, as well as I had a roller stamp from American Crafts that I stamped in navy blue, and you'll see that in the close-ups. So what I've learned over the months of doing this sequence business is that I lay them down and then I put blobs of adhesive, liquid adhesive, and then use my tweezers to set them on top of the liquid glue, and that has been the best way for me to adhere sequins. I've seen lots of discussion lately as to how people do it, and this is what I found works best for me. I do use the glue dots, but the problem with the glue dots when you've got, I mean, there's probably about 15 pieces of sequins here, or the snowflake layout that I did before, is that ends up getting pretty costly, whereas this liquid glue is a much more reasonable way of doing that application for me. So that is my layout for the week. Come back in 2 weeks and join me. Enjoy the close-ups. I hope you're doing well. Take care.